welcome to the 2025 Olmsted Network Awards. I'm Sue Breikoff. I'm the president of the Olmsted Network for about 5 months, so I'm really excited to be here with all of you. Louder, okay. Is that better? All right, this thing does things, okay. So tonight we come together to celebrate extraordinary individuals and organizations whose dedication preserves and advances the vision of Frederick Law Olmsted, the father of American landscape architecture. Their work spans the country from Boston to Buffalo to Montreal, right? We have international representation here. So we're ensuring the equitable access to green space, historic preservation, and community engagement. Before we enjoy dinner, we wanted to remember and to celebrate two very important individuals to this organization. But before that, I wanted to just acknowledge that we're thrilled to have Charlie Beveridge in the room. So for those of you who don't know Charlie's work, he is, I think it's safe to say, the preeminent scholar on Olmsted in the country, in the world. So, yeah, universe. In the universe. Okay. All right, we're going universal. So this year we did lose two very important people to the founding of what was the National Association of Olmsted Parks and is now the Olmsted Network, and we wanted to honor them for Olmsted Parks. For Olmsted Parks. Thank you, Arlene, for keeping me honest.
Sorry, Sue.
No. So this year we are honoring Betsy Shure Gross and Satterthwaite. And I'm going to ask Arlene Levy to come up because she knew them. But do you need an introduction? Right, everybody knows Arlene.
So it's the old creaky lady.
So Arlene is an Olmsted scholar, former board chair of NAOP for Parks. Okay, and
well, it was always an awkward name. We could never figure out the preposition. And as soon as I began to learn anything about Olmsted, I objected to parks because it was parks, it was suburbs, it's landscapes. And so we had to get it expanded, but I wasn't very successful. And it, began to roll off your tongue. Anyway, so, any event, this is really an honor, and I appreciate the honor. Thank you very much. He disappeared there for doing it, and it's really a pleasure working with Anne Satterthwaite, a very restrained and conservative woman, a fount of knowledge in all sorts of ways that I really even didn't give her credit for. And in reading something about her now, I'm amazed at the things she did. She had trained at Radcliffe, but also Yale had come under the influence of Christopher Tunnard, and so was very much engaged in the sense of community and history, the narratives that shaped our environment, but in addition to the equity of open space. And I had not realized how much she was involved with the Appalachian Trail and a concept I just read about called the Area of Natural Beauty, AONB, which she really fomented for. She also, as someone who resided in Georgetown, was very, very active in creating in the equity of the waterfront of it being open for people to have as park space. I didn't really know all those aspects of her activity, and so I've learned more, and I wish I had known it to share with her at the time. But I learned a lot from her. She was always a solid scholar you could go to and ask a question, and no, you weren't getting fuzz in return. To accept this award, I'd like to acknowledge Piera Weiss, and I'd like to give her an identity as well, because Piera has been a friend for a long time. But in addition, when the Olmsted NEOP needed to be reconstituted in 2015, we had a lot to do, and we turned to Piera, who filled in because of her extraordinary administrative ability and her knowledge of DC, its politics, and community activism. And so we wouldn't be here to a great extent at this time if you hadn't helped rescue us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Arlene. It's nice to be here. And on behalf of Ann Satterthwaite, who we were pretty close, and we spent a lot of time with her, especially on some of her books. I'm very thrilled to receive the award. Thank you.
Okay. This has a different emotion attached to it. And because it's a really great honor to present this award in recognition of a dear friend, dare I call her an influencer before her time, who certainly reshaped career paths of me. I started out as a European historian who was dabbling at the time in landscape architecture. And all of a sudden, because due to Betsy, I moved from kings, queens, and royal battlefields to land shaping, social planning, for people, tending to those urban battlegrounds, past, present, and future, needed to sustain our democracy and dirt. Every one of us in this room tonight, supporting what is now the Olmsted Network, are here because of Betsy. Because of the band of passionate stalwarts, including others in this room, such as Charlie Beveridge, Frank Kowski, who met together in Buffalo to prevent a school being plunked in a park. Why not? It was open space. And it was not just any park. It was a park designed by Frederick Olmsted and firm. Now, in the 1980s, the question to ask was, what's an Olmsted? None of us really knew, barely knew. And you have to also understand historic preservation at that time, building preservation was in its childhood, and historic landscape interpretation or protection was barely gestational in the 1980s. We had so much to learn, and Betsy helped to guide our path by bringing together from across the country the landscape professionals needed to interpret the land, the scholars to interpret the documents, the advocates and activists to carry forth the messages, and the politicians and money folk to turn passionate rhetoric into funded programs to benefit statewide and all their communities. To all her endeavors, Betsy brought great passion and compassion, and as her grandmother would have said, I think it's her grandmother Dora, would have said, seckle. Seckle is that intrinsic smarts, that je ne sais quoi of strategic organizing planning skills. She had a genius for bringing people together, from simple park users to state reps and governors. You see Governor Dukakis in one of those images. And she made them feel special and included, willing to roll up their sleeves and work. But her wisdom extended beyond developing programs to rehabilitate. She quickly recognized that if there was no long-term commitment to maintenance, it was just all ribbon cutting. So, built into innovative programs she fomented, there had to be funding for future caretaking so that all the public always would have a nearby, accessible, well-maintained, and safe green space. Behind Betsy's family was a generous and supportive family. Husband Gary, son Andrew, daughter Liza, and various generations you'd be greeted at their household of schnauzers, occasional ducks, and a lot of birds. Their vibrant Brookline household was a nerve center for organizing. On a dining room table, you was often found envelopes of reports that had to be mailed. We had to lick stamps in those days, no email. And as well as food and good cheer. And it was always a warm and engaging place. Betsy epitomizes what is intended in the Carolyn Loughlin Volunteer Service Award. I really wish that she were here with us tonight. She just left us too soon. Gary and Andrew. Please.
Betsy was very good at giving speeches. Actually, most people didn't realize she was very anxious when she first started giving speeches. You wouldn't realize that after that she wrote speeches for politicians, she wrote speeches for this organization, she wrote speeches, some of the lines of the speeches she wrote for elections in Massachusetts are still echoed by Democratic candidates running for high office in this country, actually. She was a very shy person, but nobody here would believe that my wife was a shy person at all. She was passionate about parks. She was passionate about the idea that parks were for the people, that parks were for people who didn't have second homes in Maine or second homes on Cape Cod, who needed to go to a place. She said that parks were like public libraries. They were one of the few places where you could go, where you could look at either the written word or the built landscape. You could treasure it for as long as you were there, and you could leave taking back memories of what you had seen. She was devoted to parks, not just for the elite, but for parks for the underserved. One of the things that she did in state government was to found the Office of Public-Private Partnerships, which made grants to local activists and neighbors who had put together some funds with which to restore their local park, even if it wasn't an Olmsted park. And the state would match that dollar for dollar. And then after she left state government, she set up an organization called Massachusetts Parks for All, which would match the money that the local neighborhood had raised so that they could then go to the state with twice as much money and get double that, so that $100 would become $400. And that was one of her great achievements, one of the things about which she was most proud. She was proud of the fact that after the neighbors cleaned up Olmsted Park, near where we lived on the hill just above where the Emerald Necklace is, the boundary between Brookline and Boston. And then she got the town the money with which to restore that park. And it was really the first major restoration of an Olmsted Park in this country outside Central Park. And one of the last things that she achieved was she put together a $92 million project for the Army Corps of Engineers, funded by the federal government and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, to drain the waterway that runs through the Emerald Necklace. It's, again, aside from Central Park, probably the largest effort to restore Olmsted's work here in this country. She thought of parks as the works of art that had been so treasured and was so much the evidence of America's early prosperity in the late 19th century and the early 20th century, and that it was a shame that they'd been allowed to decay during the 50s and the 60s and the 70s, and she saw it very much as her mission to bring those parks back to the glory they once were, to be really the works of art that were available for all to appreciate. I'm sure she would be so honored to see all of you here recognizing what was her major passion to put together for all. she thought of them as democracy and dirt, and she thought of them as Wordsworth realized in nature. And I did bring, given that I was asked to come here, I did bring with me, if I could find it, the words about of Wordsworth about parks. It's lines from the very end of the poem about the landscape near Tintern Abbey, and they're lines that she thought would very much apply to the Muddy River and Olmsted Park in Brookline as much as they did to the River Wye and the landscape in England. If I should be where I no more can hear thy voice, nor catch from thy wild eyes these gleams of past existence, wilt thou then forget that on the banks of this delightful stream we stood together, and that I, so long a worshipper of nature, hither came, unwearied in that service, rather say with warmer love, or with far deeper zeal, O holier love. Nor wilt thou then forget that after many wanderings, many years of absence, these steep woods and lofty cliffs and this green pastoral landscape were to me more dear both for themselves and for thy sake. And I think that epitomizes Betsy's love of Olmsted.
So I did want to announce on the heels of those incredible, hearing the incredible story of Betsy Shure Gross, who I never had the chance to meet, and it's very much a loss for me not to have met her, because she sounded absolutely incredible. But so in order to honor her, we are establishing the Betsy Shure Gross Impact Fund to really address some of the problems that she raised and to see out her vision. So helping. It's hard as a fundraiser. I know how hard it is to get money quickly. So you apply for a grant and it comes 6 months later. So our impact fund is something that we're going to turn grants around quickly, and so we'll be launching that next year in her honor. So with that, we're going to the rest of the awards and the remarkable people who have done incredible work. We will be honoring them after we eat, so please partake in the buffet. And maybe we'll start with the last tables, the last 2 rows of tables. There it is. Is a former board member of an AOP, the Olmsted Network, and a landscape architect currently drafting the cultural landscape report of Forest Hills Gardens in Queens, New York, which you'll find out later soon is relevant.
Louder.
Louder. Okay. It's relevant.
Is the mic on?
It is.
All right, can you hear me? I'm waiting for Liz Sargent to come up
sorry.
here. So Liz and I are here this evening because I guess it was in 2021, and Liz can tell it better. I got a call from the person we're honoring tonight to see if she could come and work with Forest Hills Gardens in Queens, New York. If you haven't been there, it is truly one of the great American landscapes. And we went together when we were working in Connecticut to meet Anthony Ospiriu, and he's coming up. And in my career, and Liz, I wanted to say something too, it's rare to meet someone who from the very beginning had this sort of innate sense of what Olmsted Jr. and Grosvenor Atterbury with Mrs. Russell Sage and the attorney whose name is Robert Weeks to Forrest, were trying to do. They were trying to show New York that what had been out of control and unsolved in Manhattan could be solved with a plan, a great plan for a way to live. And Anthony, where are you? I'm going to read this. We have a little, so So Liz and I are here to recognize Anthony, who is board president of the Forest Hills Garden Corporation that was set up in 1923, so 13 years after the original plan for Forest Hills Garden is drawn. The team leaves behind a corporation to care for this property in perpetuity and build it out. And Anthony, who's been the board president since we've been working on the cultural landscape report, has been an outstanding steward of this property with his board. It's not a one-person job, it is a community job. And Anthony, unlike anyone I've ever met, has worked his every day with such enthusiasm to protect this property and have it recognized for what it is. And he has led a comprehensive effort to rehabilitate and revitalize one of America's earliest garden cities, if not the first garden city, originally designed in 1910 by landscape architect Frederick Olmsted Jr. and architect Grosvenor Atterbury. From the beginning, Anthony has been engaged around landscape planning, infrastructure upgrades, and deep community engagement while preparing Forest Hills Gardens for a vibrant and sustainable future. And he embraces all that a community could want to protect and promote this kind of property. And so Liz, I want you to say a few words too.
Thank you. So Anthony's in the back there. So as Lizzie said, we've known Anthony since 2021, and we first arrived at Forest Hills to talk to Anthony as the COVID epidemic was sort of still in play, but winding down. And we learned from Anthony that everybody who had been cooped up in the house and unable to, get together, were using all the parks at Forest Hills Gardens, and they were overrunning the parks and destroying the parks. And so Anthony's first charge to us was, how do we refresh these parks and make them usable again, but still protect the Olmsted legacy? And I will say that was just the first of many challenges that Anthony has faced, and that he is continuing the legacy of this place that has the highest degree of integrity of 100 and some odd year old property that we've ever seen. And he has just done an amazing job, and we're so appreciative for what he's done, and that we are inspired to try to support and perpetuate this work. And so we're so glad that he's honored with the Stewardship Award today.
A few words since everybody's had a drink or two. First of all, I almost feel like, oh my God, this came to me as a shock, I will tell you. My community is facing a lot of different changes. Nothing different from what I'm hearing from everybody. Everyone has their own differences, but to sit here amongst all of you, even hearing all these challenges in the short time that I've been here today, it's great to see the spirit is in everyone, and to get this and to hear these words. I couldn't have done it without Liz and Lucy. My board would tell you that I look too deep in certain things, so I just kind of went on a whim, so I drove them nuts. But in my research, finding out what a historical landscape architect is, I'm not. I went to school for pharmacy, but for me, I do care about things in the area and the community that I grew up in. So by immersion, I think I've grown into this protective kind of person, and understanding the trees and the landscape. I knew it was a lot more than what my board was looking to get, just some typical landscapers to fix our parks. There's a lot more to it. And in finding that there are plans, that there are ways in which you should be looking at the changing landscapes, I found Liz and Lucy. And I was blown away to find out I was nominated by Lucy. I'm still finding the people that actually put in. She's still, I swear her laugh, she loves to kind of put me in this position to kind of blush. But it's truly an honor being here, watching other people. I mean, I'm in great company also with who's being nominated tonight. By the way, for Betsy, it's an absolute privilege to hear people like this. And in this room, just seeing all the spirit is continuing with everybody on that. And also, I'm so fortunate to have had cultural landscape report being done by Liz and Lucy, and our community actually is beginning to understand what that means, and that's the important. So thank you very much for this honor, Sue. I've heard such great things about you and carrying forward from everybody that you're bringing here, and I can't thank you enough for this honor. This is really a privilege, and it's for the people on my board, just so you know, they have the same spirit. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, so the next set of awards are what we fall under the umbrella of the President's Awards. And we had an embarrassment of riches this year, and we were like, we can't pick just one, so we went with three. So to start out, I wanted to bring up the Voices of Keney Park, so the Hartford crowd. So this award goes to the Voices of Keney Park is a groundbreaking initiative that brings Hartford's historic Keney Park to life through community stories. Built on 25 oral histories, this innovative online course captures the experiences of residents, stewards, and scholars, shining a light on the park's past, present, and future. Supported by the Keney Park Sustainability Project and Trinity College, the project celebrates Olmsted's vision of parks as central places of community identity and democratic engagement. We are pleased to welcome a dedicated supporter of the Olmsted Network, as well as Mary Pelletier, who is Susan Messino unfortunately cannot be here tonight, so these two are accepting the award, which Bill is going to hand to me. Yes. Right there. First, this is for Susan.
I cannot believe that like an international student like me from Vietnam one day could fall in love so deeply with a park in Hartford just by hearing so many great stories and memories shared by the people who have spent a lifetime here. And that is how we started this project. We just want to preserve and promote the carriage for Keney Parks, not only because of one of the great memories that Keney Park had made for people, but also because of its like cultural, historical significance, and also the Olmsted visions embedded in it. So I'm very honored to be here today on behalf of my team, my professor, my teammate, and also join with me Mary Pelletier, who's a very dedicated supporter for our project.
So Keney Park is especially the old-growth forest. It's an intact, mature old-growth forest in the 10-mile woods. Was also where Olmsted spent much of his youth. He's born and buried in Hartford, Connecticut, and he would ride around and walk around the neighborhoods, which would have been Keney Park, as well as other parks in the area. And so this became the early inspiration for much of his work, his vision throughout how nature is kind of a respite and an inspiration to people. And you know, of course, other writers have written about this extensively, and so.
Yeah, so actually there was one time that I visited Keney Park and I discovered a tree that is probably more than 200 years old, and I could not help but thinking that maybe Olmsted has been here, like at the same spot that I'm standing here today as well. So I believe that nature is the common ground for us to connect with not only the past, the present, but also the future, and it's also like a reminder for us that actually like a very simple truth, but sometimes we just forget that we are one. We are one in our need for nature, for love, and for beauty. So finally, may these beloved natural spaces will stay with me, with you, with us for the generation to come. Thank you so much.
Okay, now we're getting into some big groups that are going to come up here. But next we honor the Franklin Park Defenders, a grassroots coalition fiercely committed to protecting Boston's Franklin Park, one of Olmsted's finest gems. When redevelopment plans threaten to privatize public space and restrict community access to Parkways Stadium, the Defenders mobilized residents, neighborhood groups, and advocates to demand a more inclusive and transparent process. Through legal action, public forums, and alternative proposals, they have elevated the conversation about equitable park use and preservation. Their work is a powerful example of community leadership defending Olmsted's legacy. Please join me in congratulating the Defenders. Pam Jones is here. Pam Jones is here? Yeah. Okay.
But if you guys don't mind, can I have my tribe come up here with me too? I just wanted them to stand here with me because I wanted to acknowledge all of our hard work. Thank you. It's an incredible honor to be here to receive recognition from the Olmsted Network. On behalf of the Franklin Park Defenders, I want to express our deep gratitude to the board and to President Rikoff for this generous acknowledgement, and congratulations to our fellow award recipients. This moment is bittersweet for me. For the past 2 years, residents in the city of Boston have had to fight to protect and restore public parkland at Franklin Park, while many of our state and local officials stand by while it happens. Franklin Park is the oldest and largest park in the city of Boston, the crown jewel of Boston's Emerald Necklace. It provides irreplaceable open space to environmental justice communities that have too little of it already. It is protected by our state's constitution and a protection we are now defending in court against powerful interests who wants to take additional parkland and a condemned stadium known as the White Stadium to turn it into a for-profit sports and entertainment complex. White Stadium is a school-age stadium that is meant for our Boston Public Schools students. And the privatization of the stadium will prevent full access for the community. My neighbors, my fellow advocates, and everyone in the Franklin Park Defenders continues to show up every day to protect our green spaces and our rights to shape the future of our neighborhoods. We are currently in a lawsuit to protect the precious land in our Black and brown communities. We've been pressured to drop our lawsuit. We were mocked for filing our appeal, but we aren't going anywhere. We will continue to fight. I'm uncertain how far our reach will go, but if you are in a position to, or if you can share more light on our story, I encourage you to do so. Thank you again to the Olmsted Network for standing with us and helping shine a national spotlight on this fight. Together, we'll keep defending the park and public spaces that belong to all of us. If you'd like to help us grow our movement, we encourage you to go to franklinparkdefenders.com and sign our statement of principles if you can. Thank you so much.
organize Eastside Parkways Coalition, Buffalo, New York. For that visionary work to restore Humboldt Parkway, a vital part of Olmsted's original park and parkway system, disrupted by the construction of the Kensington Expressway in the late 1960s. Through organizing, legal advocacy, and public education, the coalition advances restorative justice and seeks to reconnect neighborhoods torn apart decades ago. Their efforts reflect the enduring relevance of Olmsted's vision for urban green space as a tool for connectivity, healing, and equitable access. The Olmsted Network has worked alongside Councilman Alan Bozer. Right. Oh, there you are. Thank you for raising your hand. Son of Olmsted Network founder Joan Bozer, in supporting this lawsuit, and we've been deeply impressed by the coalition's thoughtful communication and advocacy. Please join me in applauding the Eastside Parkways Coalition. Candace Moppins is here to accept the award, and there's so many Buffalo people here, I think we should all come up. Yeah.
Believe that we made it all the way to Washington, D.C. This conversation, this movement started with a conversation that I had with Brad Wells. I'm an executive director at a local community center in Buffalo, and we had a massacre at a local, the only grocery store in the neighborhood. And Brad students, Small Built Works, built a enclosure for a community refrigerator at my community center. And the day that the students and him came to install it, he asked me, so what do you think about this proposed Kensington project? And I shared my story. That my family is lifelong residents of the city of Buffalo. We have lived our lives around the 33. That my mother suffers from COPD. That my sister was a premature baby who continues to battle with asthma and other skin disorders. I shared with him people in that neighborhood who died from diseases and not from jobs that they had. They were secretaries, receptionists, they worked in offices, and yet they had mesothelioma, like they worked in a coal mine. And so he said, do you want to do lunch? And we did lunch, and we were there for hours as I was telling him about stories about people in the neighborhood and the community who have suffered from this, what we call it, toxic dump. And that began our work. Brad likes to say we are on meeting number 76.
No, 78.
Oh, 78. 78. And I believe this is probably the most important work I've ever done. Because I recognize that there are people in my neighborhood and community who can't say, I don't want this to continue in my neighborhood. Because they work for local government, or their children work for local government, or their grandchildren work for local government, and they still live there. And I don't know if you've ever been to Buffalo, but it's a very racist place. And the whole reason why the 33 is there is because they thought it was easy to annihilate and kill those people without someone saying that's wrong. And so these are there's some people that are in this room that are from Buffalo that are not up here, who are the workers, our researchers, the people who put together our information when we go out and talk with community residents, with block clubs, with church members, with elected officials. And I can say that it's stretching me. This is something that I don't do. And yet I recognize that it is probably the most important thing that I'll ever do. That I want to make sure that my children and my now grandchildren live in a better Buffalo. Healthier, greener, because they deserve it. And so I want to introduce our attorney who won our first lawsuit, Attorney Alan Bozer, and he's going to tell you how you can continue to help us in this journey for Buffalo. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Alan Bozer, and some of you will recognize my last name, Joan Bozer, almost 50 years ago, with Frank Kowski and Gretchen Tolles and a number of others, founded the Buffalo Olmsted Parks. It was called Friends of Olmsted Parks at the time, and then went on to organize the National Association of Olmsted Parks. So I'm absolutely delighted to be here because for the past 45 years at Sunday dinners, until my mother passed a couple years ago, we talked about the Olmsted Parks. I'm lucky. I've done litigation at a firm called Phillips Lytle, one of the largest law firms in Buffalo, New York, for 40-odd years, a lot of private litigation. But I had an opportunity when this all came about to meet Candace and Brad and find out that there were others who were shocked at what had happened and really did not want a perpetuation of a concrete chasm through the east side of Buffalo, which had replaced one of Olmsted's beautiful parkways, the Humboldt Parkway. Humboldt Parkway is an original Frederick Law Olmsted design parkway, part of the Buffalo Park system. Now, why did Olmsted want to do parks? Why did he do landscaping? Why did he bring greenery? It wasn't just the greenery, but he wrote about the health effects of having park systems, especially in city areas. And Humboldt Parkway, with the other parts of the Buffalo Park system, were intended to allow city residents to get out into green space, to recreate, breathe fresh air, and do things for healthy ways. What happened 90 years after this parkway was put in is the state, in order to get people from the suburbs into the city, they just ran roughshod over the residents of that area. They obliterated Humboldt Parkway and put in a limited access highway with 75,000 cars a day. What happened to Olmsted's idea about health? The cardiovascular diseases, the respiratory diseases along Humboldt Parkway, now the expressway, is in the upper 98th percentile, worst in America. So when I met Candace and Brad and others who actually wanted to do something about this, we were up against the state on a $1.5 billion project, a huge project. And we took them on with the support of the community, with Candace and Brad organizing people. The community rose up, and we took on the state, and we defeated the state and their $1.5 billion project. We offended the governor, we offended New York State senators, we offended every assemblyman who was there. But the community rose up. I was asked to mention Sherry Sherrill, who was a brilliant speaker. She can't be here because she's hospitalized. Her family has suffered horribly, but she's a brilliant speaker and one of those people who came out of the community to do something about what the state wanted to do. We stopped the Department of Transportation. They're going to start over with, but we have another part of this lawsuit being heard in January, which is to get a judgment under the public trust doctrine because the legislature decreed the Buffalo Park system. Only the legislature could take it away. And right now, under this 6-lane expressway, it is Buffalo Parkland. It was never alienated properly. They made a big mistake, and it's not a technicality. It's when the legislature sits down and debates things about taking 43 acres of parkland out of the middle of the city, something healthy, and replacing it with something disease-ridden. Yes, the legislature should be involved. So our lawsuit will be heard in January. Even while we stop this $1.5 billion project, we're going further. We have an affirmative vision to put back a 43-acre Olmsted design parkway in Buffalo, New York. The community is behind us. I will be reaching out to other Olmsted organizations to join our lawsuit, because with the community behind us, who can stand against us? Thank you very much for allowing me to speak.
So that is all of our awards, and I think there's some big takeaways from the day and from this evening, and I think that is that we, more than ever, we need to fight for the legacy and keep strong with that. And to borrow some of Alan's phrasing, like, we need to be offensive. So let's be offensive. Let's go out there and offensive.
We're not quite done, and I hope you will indulge me. But the only thing that would have made this better was if there was a Bills-Patriots game this weekend, but I checked. But I think, West Point has its long gray line, and as I looked out and listened to everybody tonight, there is a similar line that runs from people that have recently passed away to people who have just come to this work in this space in the last 2 or 3 months. And it is incredibly inspiring. To me, if we had enough awards, we'd give them to everybody here, because you are all heroes, and I think have done incredible things and will continue to do incredible things. And we want to be here to support everything and anything that you are doing. So please let us know how we can do that. So now there are 2 other, these are totally unsanctioned and unrehearsed, spontaneous awards. There's one person who couldn't be here tonight, whose name everybody knows, and I think we should just recognize the importance that she's been to this organization and to pretty much everybody in this room. I know, to me personally, that's how I got involved, but I think we should recognize Dee Dee Petroff, past president, who was so instrumental in building this organization to where it is today and handing it over to Sue in such good shape. So, a round of applause for Dee. I recently went to Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania. So you know all what Punxsutawney is all about, right? So the locals call it, like they call DC here, the weather capital of the world, because it has its famous groundhog. And as I was there, and we were driving back from Punxsutawney to New York, I started thinking about how the groundhog, I mean, he lives in the borough behind the library 364 days a year. Once a year, he's taken up to Gobbler's Knob and does his thing with guys with the top hats. My uncle used to be one of them. So he's an important figure, but you don't see him a lot. You see him once or twice, and that's it. And I started thinking about, he's not here tonight, so it kind of was a curveball that he's not here to actually receive this award. But we have our own person who, along with Dee Dee, really brought this organization to the fore. He served as chairman through all of Dee Dee's tenure, and graciously consented to stay on as co-chair to kind of tutor and mentor me into the role. And I'm incredibly grateful to him for doing that for me. And he's done it, for the whole organization. He's been there, kind of a rock of support for Dee Dee. You don't see him very often. He's behind the scenes, but he was constantly in touch with her. But he does he popped up every once in a while at, events like this and bicentennial. So, after we left Punxsutawney, I remembered that I'd seen this in the gift shop, and I was going to give it to Phil. Then I thought, since Phil wasn't going to be here, I'd give it to Spencer because he and Phil and I share the same hairstyle, ethnicity and all. But Spencer's not here either, so I got to do it myself. Anyway, so I got this for Phil. And he might want to change this to Milwaukee, Phil. I don't know. I got Phil the sweatshirt to thank him for all of his work. It's a small token of our appreciation for Phil Schultz, who's been the chairman and will be staying on the board for another year. But cheers. That's all I have.
All right, there's nothing else over there.